Alright, so this is the installation video for snackability. Get started. So assuming you cloned the repository, you would essentially want to go onto Bitbucket, which you'll have access to via Professor Sajati. And basically, you're going to want to go into each repository separately. You'll see that there is the backend and front end. So we're going to start with the front end. You would basically just do what you would normally do for a clone. I usually just take the URL up here and I copy that and I run git clone followed by this URL in whatever directory I want it to be in. And you want to have the snackability front end and the back end in the same level, so next to each other. But I already have them cloned, so once you have them cloned, you can open them up in any text editor. I like Visual Studio Code. That's just my preference, but you can use whatever you want, whatever you like. A couple of things you're going to need for all of this to work is MySQL. So you can go ahead and search for MySQL, go on their website, and just follow the instructions for installing. You should see downloads up here. Follow whatever instructions for installing. You're going to want the community edition, not the enterprise. And depending on your system, you would get a different type of installer. But once you have MySQL installed and set up, you're also going to want to install Nodejs. So you would just do a search for Nodejs. Really important for Node.js, do not download these versions. You're going to want to go to the other versions. So you go to downloads here. And the version you want, the one that we use, you can see inside of the repository. If you ever need to know the version of something that we use, go to package.json here. And you should see for Node, I believe we're on version, 8.15. It's critical that you use 8.15 for this application to work. We had some dependency issues, so you're going to want to make sure you're running 8.15.0. That's both on the front end and I believe on the back end as well. Let me see here. Package.json. Yes, on the front and the back end, you need to be running 8.15. After you install Node, you're also going to want the Heroku command line interface. So you can go ahead and log in to Heroku. That information should be available to you via Dr. Palacios. This would be the login email. She'll give you the password. And once you log in, there should be something somewhere about installing the command line interface. Here. So yeah, if you're not sure, just go to this page in their documentation. And here it is. There'd be something about the Heroku CLI. You just need to make sure you have that installed. It's very useful for when you need to check the logs for the production app, which is where the production app sits on the Heroku servers. So you're going to need to use Heroku whenever you're dealing with the production app. Aside from those, you're also going to want to install React Native. So you would come here and go to the Get Started page, and it'll kind of outline for you how to install all of that. So just follow their Getting Started guide, pretty much. You're going to need the Expo command line interface as well. You don't need to initialize the project because you already have an initialized project. You just need to make sure you have the CLI installed. And it wouldn't hurt to have this one installed as well. As far as the dependencies go, though, where are we at? Let's see here. So if you're running this on an Android device, I don't know if you can see in the bottom right corner on my webcam, I have an Android device I run this on. So I didn't need Android Studio for this, but if you don't have access to an Android device or you're not running on a Mac, so if you're running on Windows and you don't have an Android, you can always download Android Studio. You would just Google Android Studio like anything else. Go to their website and then download, I guess, the latest version. That'll take a while. And then, it'll have to set up Gradle and everything. But once you do that, you can essentially just look up the steps for setting up what is called an Android emulator. And that will basically mimic a phone. I can't speak for how smoothly that will be of an experience because we were using physical devices to run everything. So hopefully you have access to one. If not, I'm sure you could get one, relatively cheaply. You don't have to buy like a data plan or anything like that. But let's see what else. So React Native Command interface. Oh, you're gonna want to use for this Yarn as your package manager. Very, very important. Do not use npm. I repeat, do not use npm. Especially if you're on a Windows machine. I had a lot of issues with the Nodejs and Node prejip modules. They're basically dependencies that we have. That was a huge headache we had. We found out that if we use Yarn, none of those issues, basically all those issues went away. So you're going to want to install Yarn. You just Google it, go to their thing, download whatever version you need. It's an MSI installer if you're using Windows. I'm not sure about a Mac. I'm on a Windows machine. So yeah, you would install Yarn. Once Yarn is installed, and you have MySQL and everything, what you would want to do first, what I usually do first, is you're going to want to open up a terminal. So I have the terminal here. You're going to want to go into either repository, and I'm actually going to run these at the same time just to save time, but so I have the back end here and the front end here. I'm just going to go ahead and run yarn install. And what that's going to do is it's going to look at that package.json file we have open here, which exists in both places, the front end and the back end. It goes through that file, and it's going to essentially install all the dependencies that this application needs in order to run. So okay, that's weird. Effective version 1.13. It's probably just one of the engine things. Let me run this again. There we go. Yeah, so I'm glad that just happened. That points out something here. This is your engines and package.json. You need to make sure that the engine you have, the version you have in here, matches what you actually have installed in your machine. I guess I did an update of Yarn and forgot to update this part. So I'm on 1.15.2 now. So this needed to change, essentially. And assuming, that's all good, you should be good to go. Let's see. And the front end, we don't have an engine script, so that's fine. So I'm going to run it on the front end as well. And everything should go according to plan. It should be smooth here. Now, while this is running, I'm just going to kind of let it do its thing. I want to show you something that's really important. Once you install MySQL, you're going to want to get a program called MySQL Workbench. And that I cannot find right now. Hold on. Where's Workbench? Hold on. give it a second. My computer's trying to install quite a lot of things right now. It's gonna run a little bit slow. So yeah, you're gonna want to open MySQL Workbench right here. I'm actually gonna go ahead and do something here. I'm just gonna cancel this one on the right because it's just running slow. All right, so the backend just finished installing. I'm just gonna go ahead and pause the video because I have a time limit, but this is what it'll essentially look like. And once this is all done, you should get a done with the amount of time it took, and you shouldn't get any actual errors, just a lot of warning. All right, so it just finished with the front end. So once everything's done, you actually should see this save lock file on both because you shouldn't have a lock file. If you do have a lock file before you run your install on the front of the back end, delete it. Make sure to delete it first. So yeah, once that's all done, we're gonna go ahead and run these commands to start it. So yarn start on the front and the back end. Start it up. Apologies, I keep pausing the recording. I have a time limit of 15 minutes if we're coming up on, but once you're done, you run yarn start and you should see listening on port and then whatever port you have it set to in the code. And then you should see all this for the user tokens. On top of that, for the front end, you'll see this Expo stuff. That'll open up a window in your browser that it looks like this. So you can essentially hook up an Android device and hit A on the command line. So you would come here and type A here in this window. Or the best thing really to do is to open the command line, or sorry, open the Expo app, and there's an option to scan this QR code. That'll run the app for you on any device. That's typically what I do. So once that's done, I'm going to go over now the SQL stuff. So inside of the repo, you should see under DB all of these SQL files. Basically, all you need to do are copy and paste these files to make all of the different tables. So this will create the database locally for you. You can actually, instead of copy paste, you can actually open those. So once you have MySQL Workbench open, you would need to create a new host and database, and basically just make sure that all of the parameters for that are the same as what you have here. So database host would be localhost, whatever user you put for that in MySQL Workbench, whatever password, this is mine, please don't steal it, whatever, and then the database would need to be snackability _2. That's what you would need to name it. So yeah, basically you would run all of those SQL files in Workbench, and it will create the database, and then you would be able to connect to that in the code. So yeah, that about covers it. Once you run those SQL files, you should have all of these snacks available to you. And if you guys have any questions, just reach out to us through Dr. Palacios. I'm more than happy to help you with any installation or setup.